Hey, what's going on? Welcome everyone to another episode of Every Second Counts podcast. My name is Tom Ettinger, and I'm here today to go over an array of topics that I feel that gets ignored, not just in the public sense, but in the personal sense, as far as family, friends, and people we communicate with, because everyone always got something they're dealing with, right? But these things that they're dealing with are unseen. These are characteristics that you could explain to somebody, but they're not seen. They're only described through the person telling the story. I like to call these ghost stories. These ghost stories are what veterans tell, people dealing with substance abuse, people dealing with suicide ideations. These are people struggling, people dealing with mental health issues, and they have to now explain it to another person and make them realize and appreciate what they're dealing with, what they're going through. And I feel that's the hardest part because ghost stories are something you always hear about, but it's untrue. It's things that you may have heard someone else tell, but you're like, how can we have the same symptoms? Or how can I actually describe what I'm going through to another person and make them understand? I believe that's the hardest part because you're the author of these stories. You're the dictator of these stories on how this story is going to go. The receiving end, medical, the hospitals, therapists, the VA, doctors, they're the audience, and it's how they dictate these stories, how they receive them, is how you move forward. And I feel sometimes we get out of the military and we become actors. And I say that in a sense to where you gotta really put in that work to where you have to make someone understand what's going on, maybe inside your mind, your body, your feelings, overwhelming feelings, um, just certain emotions that are very hard to describe. And you want someone to understand because for me, it's belief. It's so hard to make someone believe what you're going through and then acknowledge it and then, come up with a plan and move forward. I believe it's easy in some stances, but in other situations, it's extremely hard. Um, we all have our own stories. I feel my range while serving in the Marine Corps, we dealt with Navy corpsmen, we dealt with civilians when I was on recruiting duty. So the healthcare that we receive in the military, it's exactly the same kind of healthcare you'll receive out in the civilian world. Because if you go to a civilian world doctor, you're gonna wait. If you see a nurse practitioner or a nurse prior to seeing your doctor in civilian world, same thing. In the military, you're gonna get questioned. You're gonna get asked why you're here, your symptoms, all these stories. Now you're telling you're beginning your first chapter. You're laying it down to the first line of defense when you go into these situations, these medical facilities, and then now you're trying to describe. All right, this is what's going on. But if you're as popular as I am in these institutions, I'll tell you what, you already know the 3rd chapter is coming in soon. The nurse is gonna come in, they're gonna take your blood pressure, they're gonna weigh you, they're gonna ask you your symptoms, your questions, how long this has been going on, blah, 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 and they're just writing it down. Also, the doctor could come in and ask you the same questions. Now, for me, it becomes extremely frustrating because why did I even tell the first person? Like, what was the purpose of me telling the lady at the front desk when I'm making the appointment? Now I'm telling the nurse practitioner, and then when I go back to the doctor, now I'm telling 3 people what's wrong with me, and now I have to act it out. I'm either playing charades or I'm putting on an opera. I'm doing something so they can understand what, what you could be dealing with, the symptoms that you have, because keep in mind, they are practicing medicine. They are practicing. So the further in detail that you're able to give actually helps the insight of the doctor when they're trying to see, maybe break down the problem and see the symptoms maybe you're going through and what you're really dealing with. And that becomes extremely frustrating too, because we get in our own minds, and if you're like me, you start looking those symptoms up. You start becoming a doctor yourself because you served, or you know someone that served, or you watched an episode of ER once, or House. So you know what, the terminology you need to use. You're out there trying to tell these people, "Hey, this is what's wrong with me. Help me." But along the way, there has to be some consistency. There has to be, I feel it's our part to play the main role. And it's either through communication, or it's through another source, to where we have to be able to explain what we're going through, and it be understood in the same sense that we're explaining it. I mean, I feel through the military, any kind of testing, I mean, when we put applicants in, or when you're going through medical yourself, they ask you, the mental health questions that are the same no matter what. And I feel those mental health questions they're laughable. If you were sad or, depressed in the last 2 weeks, you ever think about hurting yourself? Have you been less interested in things? Questions like that, and it's like, that no, like, I haven't even thought about that. I'm not interested in anything. And I know these are general questions. These are questions that people maybe in the past, but I think we're beyond those questions personally. Like I said, this is all my what my opinion and how I see it, but I feel when we're asking these questions, if I me as a veteran and I've answered these questions, no, because that's going to add to other questions, and that makes you extremely uncomfortable. And in some parts it's hard to share, but it's easy to say no and keep the ball rolling, because now once you say yes, what do you have to do? You start chapter 4. You start telling your story. Once the third chapter comes in, the doctor walks in, now you're telling your story. You're trying to explain what's going on, but no one's there. There's no supporting actors. You're setting the scene, but you're trying to explain exactly what you've been going through, and they have to bring it all together and try to make it make sense. But I feel there's a underlining issue, not when you just get out, but I feel it's while you're serving. It's the ego factor, it's the professional factor, and I feel it's the overwhelming factor of, I don't want people in my damn business. I feel that's the biggest thing when you're in the military. You want to be looked at, you want to shine, you want to do great, you want to be the best military service member you can be. But I wanna say my trash, my problems, I'm gonna keep them locked up in my sea bag, locked away, because I don't wanna tell nobody, and I feel that's the stigma, and sadly, that's the truth. We don't get it out while we're in, because of the yearly classes we take, the yearly, um, things we go through while serving, and you get these classes, suicide prevention classes, smoking classes, drink alcohol classes, all these classes while you're in the military, but they're taught in a way to where it's like, we know, you're not supposed to smoke, it's bad for you. You know you're not supposed to drink, it's bad for you. But things that service members go through, these veterans, these active duty servicemen, these reservists that get plucked out of the civilian world and thrown into situations that, maybe they're not prepared for mentally, physically. We have these situations to where, where does it all stem from? So now we have to explain it to somebody. Now we got to take all these situations, put it in a box, and then it's like, you know what? we're gonna dissect this and diagnose it. So what do? They reach in, and I didn't have this during my career, but I know a lot of people did, to where you get flooded with medication and they want you to start taking medication, and that medication throws off your schedule. It changes who you are, it changes how you act, it changes, you know, your inner self, who you're supposed to be, because now your body's diluted. And I'm not knocking the meds, not at all. I'm not knocking the VA. I'm not knocking the health system. I'm not knocking none of that. What I'm knocking is the presentation. The presentation of coping skills and mechanisms for veterans and active duty service members, to where maybe they feel a little more open to talk. Because I know for myself, when I had to go and deal with my issues and things that I went through. I had multiple injuries prior to getting out. I had my own personal situation I'll cover one time on this podcast, but a lot of internal myself pressure, as well as outside work pressure. And when you're in a position in the military to where you're in a leadership position, or you're in charge of other people, and what your job is, you're in a leadership position no matter what, no matter what your billet is. I don't want to misconstrue it, but when you're able to be in charge, and now you have to sacrifice your own self for others. That's the role of leadership, one of the roles. But so how do you deal with your stories? How do you deal with your pain? Because now you're accountable. Now you've been put in a position where you have others under you. Now you have to watch them, watch yourself. If you have a family, and it becomes very overwhelming. So we start writing these ghost stories to ourselves. We start telling people our ghost stories, and hoping they understand, they believe us, because without anything there, it's exactly what we say. It's exactly who we are, and it gets put in a constant, in a way, I believe, to where you don't want to put all your stuff on a microscope and be judged. Ego driven, you know, ego. I believe it's a big thing. We talk about it when we work out, when we're talking about going to the gym, when you go to jujitsu, when you're trying other sports, team sports. It's always keep your ego in check, keep your ego outside, all this stuff. But ego is who you are. Ego is what you're born into when you join the military. You don't pride yourself because you're a United States Marine. It's instilled in you. You feel that pride of being a soldier, or being an airman, or being, a sailor, or in the Navy, in the Coast Guard. If you're in the Guard, the reserves, whatever it is, there's that sense of pride that's given to you, that's earned through a process of recruit training, a boot camp, and then further schooling. But that's the only tools that's really given to you. You know how to survive. You know how to at least shoot a weapon, and give some kind of first aid. There's no trauma building. There's no, hey, I hope you're ready to deal with this. You might see some things, and it's something that's expected. I don't want to say it's not. And there's a whole lot more than me that have had to deal with things in a situation, to where I feel it doesn't help everyone in the end. And if you're unable to tell your own story, and you expect other people to be the author, it makes it extremely even more harder, because when you're not saying anything and you're extremely quiet, no one knows what's going on. No one can tell what's going on in your head. So when you're the ghost writer of ghost writers, ghost stories, it makes it a lot more harder. So I feel, as veterans, we need to reach out more about ourselves, not just to talk to others. We need to reach out just for ourselves. Like, I'm dealing with this. I need help with this. However, these people need help with this as well. So if you're in that position, you always got to put yourself there. Maybe not first, but you have to put yourself at least there. Because when you start sacrificing yourself, what you go through, things that you're dealing with, and you just put it away, like I said, it gets stored, and then new things come along, and that just gets stored as well along with it. So as we tell our stories, who do we tell it to? We tell it to medical, we tell it to corpsmen, we tell it to flight docs, we tell it to the hospitals, therapy, VA officials. We tell our stories to all these providers, hoping they have something in their bag of tricks that's going to help it. We always hear now about VA compensation. What's your VA claim? And when it comes down to it, you're getting traded off for money. That's what it actually comes down to. It's a disability maybe you had while you were serving, but it doesn't go away. It doesn't change anything. Once you get out of the military, it just doesn't go away. Things that maybe you locked in a closet, those hinges get rusty. You know what I'm saying? So eventually those things are gonna come out, and then now you're gonna have to describe it to somebody and unload that whole dump truck of things that you've been hiding, and that becomes a lot. And even if you're dealing with any issues, it becomes a lot. So what do you have to do? You have to deal with these providers, and it becomes extremely aggravating. It becomes extremely um, hard on yourself and others because the frustration of it is you're dealing with people you don't know at this point. You're dealing with people that you don't work with. You're dealing with people that you hope trust you, and you're hoping that people are there with your best interest in mind, but you're just a fish in a barrel. You go to these VAs, you go to these medical offices on bases, they always got someone in them. There's always someone going through something, right? Like I said in the beginning. So we have to understand people complain about the VA. I could also throw my complaints in there, but that's just it's too small for amount of people that are needing the facilities. It's too spread out. So it's real hard when people complain. Like when you go into the VA, for any civilian listening, and if you've never had the opportunity, I'm not saying go do it, but when you go into the VA, and I've had to go to two different ones here, both 2 hours apart, but when I go, they are packed, and they're packed of Vietnam vets, they're packed with Desert Storm vets, they're packed with OIE vets, OIF vets. Um, they're packed with people that served this country as long as you did. So it's real hard to complain when maybe you're new to going to the VA, or maybe you're used to a certain kind of healthcare when you were in, depending on your branch, depending on what branch you were in, and it becomes very frustrating. Like, what about me? What about me? And it should be. At that point, it is about you, because you need to deal with what you're dealing with, because that changes your lifestyle, your daily choices, and things that you're going through. So you always got to take the right mark and the step in the right direction when trying to deal with these providers, and make sure they hear what you're saying. Make sure you're following up, you're making your appointments, because there's no point in telling these ghost stories if you're not going to follow through with it. If you just want to tell people certain things, no one's ever going to be able to help you and reach out, because there's going to be something there. Hopefully at some point, either somebody, some health professional that's going to be able to help you and get you to where you need. I believe one of the steps that helped me was when I went through the 22 mission 22 process. I did the 6 month mission 22 veteran care and recovery, and I'll tell you what, it was different because you have to talk to a coach, and that coach is there available. And keep in mind, if you're listening, Mission 22, go in there if you need help, if you want help, and you're looking for something. Mission 22 will help you provide literature, they'll provide coaching. It provides you with a 6 or 12-month, pack when you talk with them. It's absolutely free, and it provides tools that help you deal with what you're dealing with. But the best part really for me, because unless it's about somebody, a biography, that's what I'm hip to reading. Military biographies, I'm hip to it. But if it's a non-military person and they're telling me about the military, I go deaf real quick. If it's not something exciting, if it talks about feelings, if it talks about certain things, to me, it's not very exciting. But the best part of going through that Mission 22 was the therapy, was going through and talking to somebody. And I know it might be the hardest thing, but you have to toe the line and either jump in the pool or stand there wet and cold, because you have to give in to get. You have to give in to get. So being able to just share without repercussions, without opinions, without anything that could come back on me, I just was able to speak and deal with things that maybe you never know you're actually dealing with. Or the one book that I think that was real good was The Source. I don't remember the name, and obviously I don't have it in front of me because I'm not professional. But being able to find the source, because a lot of the sources of our pain, our troubles are when we were younger, and then it connects to something we've seen, or some kind of trauma we go through while serving, and it just amplifies it. Not in all cases by any means, but it's in my case, a lot of things I saw, and it made a lot of sense. And you start getting relieved, like, because it is you. Don't get me wrong, it is you, but you know why. You start thinking, you'd understand it, and then you can accept. I think the hardest part is acceptance. When you gotta tell your ghost story, accept it. This is who I am. I'm not perfect, but you know what? This is what I'm struggling with. This is what I'm dealing with. I need help in these areas, and we keep moving forward every day. But if you want to drown in your sorrows and keep hiding from any kind of solution, it's never gonna get better. So reaching out is always better, and therapy could come in different facets. Uh, Especially for me, mine is, if I have the opportunity, and I stay away from it. I stay away from it because of my own selfishness. I love talking to people I served with, old Marines. I actually had a phone call last night with a guy I served with, and I ain't even talked to dude in 10 years. We haven't spoke, and we kicked it for an hour like it was nothing, and it was like we spoke 2 weeks ago. It was that amazing, and I believe that is a huge part, because for me, being able to call someone I served with, and be able to connect and laugh and go through the things, because those hard times are celebrated now. If you're able to celebrate it, you're able to celebrate it with people you went through it. And those people are the people that have those lanterns in the darkness that you feel you're in. Those are the people you need to reach out to. You can reach out to, professionals, please do. Reach out to therapy, reach out to hospitals, reach out 988, reach out for help. But if you cannot reach out to help, reach out for professional help, because ego goes back and forth. It's real hard to someone that you worked with or served with, that maybe admired you, or you admired them, or you had good work history with. And then what happens? Now you have to reveal something truthful. And you know what the power in that is? They're probably dealing with the same thing. So in my journey, the more emotion I've been showing towards my family, towards my coworkers, towards anybody, I'm posting on social media, just having emotion and just feelings, and just trying to become more and more normal, as far as you can. It's exhilarating, because once you're able to feel a certain things, and it takes time. I'm not even close, son, but I'll tell you what, it's those baby steps of just sharing a little thing on what bothers you. Maybe you're sitting there and people don't understand, and they if they don't understand, they can't comprehend, and it could, in some parties, make you extremely angry and frustrated. But they're ghost stories that no one could see. They're ghost stories no one could hear. No one could hear the stories you're saying unless you say them. No one could hear them unless you're being vocal towards them and communicating the best way you can. Other service members, I believe, are key. We have the biggest gang in the world. All the former veterans and reservists and people serving right now. That is the biggest connection I feel we have as a community, that and we shine we shine a bad light on it. We don't expose it enough. There's thousands of veteran-owned businesses that don't get the right support, and I feel that that's the black eye in it. We go commercial, we always look like, "Oh, this guy's trying to make a buck," but we don't wanna support it. But we don't look enough, I feel, maybe as a group, as a society, we don't look at it as, "What is he dealing with? What is he doing? Why do I have to donate? And why is it about him?" Because those sources run deep. Those veterans out there are risking a lot because they either retired, got out of the military, and they're starting something, utilizing the training they received and trying to exploit it to get word out for other veterans. And maybe we don't hear it. The world becomes very deafening when you live in the culture and you go by the Joneses. For those listening that don't understand what the Joneses is, what's popping next? What's new? You saying this way to take a picture now? Boom. This is a new song everyone's putting on their social media. Boom. Jumping into what's cool, what's not standing on by yourself. And then when you're trying to do everything that's cool, you lose your self identity. Reach out to your families. I believe that's one of the most powerful things because they're the ones we ignore the most. Not just veterans. This is a overall mental health thing, I believe. It becomes very selfish, and as it should, but it becomes very selfish because when you're dealing with any issues, you try to keep it to yourself, as I said before, but you don't want to communicate anything with the people that love you the most. And that becomes the most frustrating on both sides because you feel they should feel a certain way. You feel they feel you should express something, but you come to a stalemate. It's just so hard to express. Like I said, you're putting on an opera, or you're just trying to make someone understand what you're going through. And then once you make them understand, it's not going to go away, but you have a crutch now. You have someone there to help you in any situation. And if you're married or you have children or you have your parents or you have relatives, man, that's who's there for you. That's those plugs in life. That's the ones you plug into and get re-energized every day. Get that, hey, what's going on? Break a little bread every day. See how people are doing, and you just keep it moving on. I think the biggest thing right now is the focus of losing 22 to 44 people a day. I think that I can't comprehend it with everything you see on the news and whatever news you watch. There's not enough. There's not enough stopping suicide. There's not enough. We could raise all the money in the world, but for what? You got to turn words into action because you all these companies, we're not stopping anything. If you're raising awareness, don't stop. But we're not. We need to get bigger. We need to get better, and we need to get more efficient. And the best thing we could do right now is help people out, find the resources they need. If that's 988, 988, the crisis center. It's for suicide, mental health, substance abuse, any kind of crisis you're dealing with or going through, civilian or veteran. If you're a veteran, go in there, hit one. And if you don't want to talk to no one, you can text. Makes it easy for everyone. Text. And I did a little research on this. Only 2% of the calls that they receive, 988 nationwide, require a 911 call, which is spectacular. So that means the counseling and the conversations are somewhat working. They're somewhat working. But you know what? Not every conversation is gonna check the box completely. Maybe that one conversation leads to another one that leads to being able to become more open and be satisfied in what you're actually dealing with and know there it's progression weekly, daily, and monthly. But you got to tell your ghost stories. You got to make sure people understand what you're going through and what you're dealing with because hiding it doesn't help nobody and your ego will deteriorate before your symptoms go away. So stop being prideful. Reach out to others, and it doesn't have to be the conversation to where, hey, what's going on? How are you feeling? What are you doing? You want to go hiking? You want to go running? You want to go work out? You want to go see a movie? Let's go rollerblading. Something. It's something, maybe an activity, something. Invite a veteran to go do something. And of course, they're going to say no, most likely. But make it fun. Well, I'm gonna come hang out with you. But it's that communication that gets the ball rolling, and that's what we need. So before I bounce out of here, I got to thank 22 Mohawks being a sponsor of the show. 22 Mohawks, headed by Dave and Stacy. Outstanding, outstanding nonprofit. Like I talked about last episode, 22 Mohawks offers pups for veterans, service dogs, trained dogs that they'll deliver to you for free. No vets, payments, nothing. You don't have to pay for nothing. Monthly financial classes, suicide prevention classes. Go to 22mohawks.com. Find them on Facebook and Instagram, 22 Mohawks. Dave and Stacy, outstanding people. And make sure you check out the Contagion Effect podcast. Outstanding people. Mike and Eric, they've taken me under their wing since I was on their show, and they do outstanding work for veterans, and I'm extremely proud proud to be alongside with Dave and Stacy, 22 Mohawks, and Mike and Eric for the Contagion Effect. But other than that, that's it for me this weekend. Keep in mind, contact care, and and listen. You got to listen. Maybe you don't have to interrupt, but you got to listen. So until next week, keep moving forward and get busy because every second counts.